Welcome to EVONA Origin Stories, the space podcast where we look to bring you extraordinary leaders from within the sector and their fascinating stories of early life, career, and how they broke into the space industry.
We've got an incredible guest with us today on the podcast. Named as one of 2022's top rising stars in science and engineering, she's a lead space systems engineer advocating for a more diverse STEM workforce. Fueled by a lifelong love of space, maths, and physics, she's passionate about inspiring other women and young people to look past social constructs and pursue a career in STEM. She advocates for the awareness of unconscious bias in the industry, as well as ways to overcome this in creating diverse teams. We touch on fostering more inclusive workforces, as well as attracting and retaining diverse candidates. Having already worked for industry giants like the European Space Agency, she's worked on some fascinating projects developing next-generation space technologies, one of which was developing a satellite the size of a shoebox. We're very excited to have with us here today, Diviya Devani.
Hey Divya, good to finally meet you and speak with you. How are you doing?
Yeah, likewise. Really well, thank you. Yeah, and yourself?
Yeah, all good. Thanks for taking the time to come onto our show. It's great to have you on today. Really appreciate it. I know you're probably busy and stacked, so really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. I know I'm a bit late to the party on this, by the way, but massive congratulations on winning your 2022 Rising Star Awards a few weeks ago. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic news. So I guess for our listeners, it'd be good to start from the early days and talk us through where you started in life, where you grew up, school, college, that type of thing, and sort of eventually how you found your way into your early career at Teledyne ETV.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, where did it all start? So I grew up in North London, and I completed some of my primary school education there. And when I was about 11, we moved not very far to Northwest London. So I moved schools then. I completed my secondary and sixth form education in Northwest London. At school, I think I had a broad interest in a lot of subjects, and I really did enjoy the challenge of physics and maths. So when it came to picking my A levels, I chose maths, physics, and philosophy. And then obviously once I'd completed my A levels, I was deciding what I wanted to study at university. I'd always been passionate about space growing up, and I thought I wanted to be an astrophysicist at one point, but that was before I could even say it or knew what astrophysicists were.
Yeah.
So I had a really interesting friend, and she told me about astrophysicists, and I thought, wow, if you can't say it, then it must be a cool job. And we were bizarre. We used to, walk home from school talking about the planets and the stars and aliens and you name it. So I was a nerd from quite a young age. And so I chose to study physics, but if I'm honest, I didn't really know what job I wanted or how to get it. So physics seemed like a broad enough degree to keep my options open. And it just so happened that during my degree, so I studied at the University of Nottingham, there was a company called E2V, who are now known as Teledyne E2V, and they came and talked to us about what they do as part of one of our applications in physics courses. So when I graduated and I started applying for jobs, most of the jobs I wanted were, for aerospace companies, and they asked for engineering degrees, so I couldn't really apply. But Teledyne E2V was specifically looking for physicists, which was great because I applied for a job and I was successful in being accepted onto their engineering graduate scheme. That was sort of how I got to Teledyne E2V and got onto their graduate scheme.
Amazing. And I guess now that you've been in the space industry now for the past few years and sort of worked in various different elements throughout the space sector, what is it that, everyone I speak to has a different sort of perspective on space and what it means, what it will be, and where they sort of see it going in the future. What is it that you love most about the space sector?
The thing I really love about the space sector is knowing that I'm part of this quest to explore the universe and also to learn more about the Earth. And something that's really important to me in my job or my career is knowing that I'm making a difference in the world. And so working in the space sector, I really feel like I am making a difference, in across all the different technologies. It's either helping directly on Earth or for future to explore the universe and understand a lot more about the universe.
Amazing. And the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is it's kind of a two-pronged question. It kind of ties in with your recent reward as well. Is one of the sort of the big motives for us and the whole sort of ethos behind this podcast is we want to make space accessible for everybody. So it's not all astronauts and rockets and what have you, but everybody from any background, industry, education, there is an opportunity for you in the space sector. But one of the hot topics now, not just across space, but I'd say probably the sort of the whole of STEM in general, is diversity. Unfortunately, the stats are not where they need to be. They are still a little bit hard to believe in the modern day. But I guess as a female engineer yourself and sort of thought leader within the sector, what are your thoughts on diversity in space currently, and what do you feel we should be doing differently across the industry and at STEM level as well to kind of try and impact change and sort of raise awareness for future generations?
The solution or things we can do in two different kind of streams. So I think one of them is, I think both of them are related to using data to take action. And firstly, I think that, we do understand and we know a lot more about how each gender is different and the different motivations, for example, for choosing what to study in a career. And we can use this information, this data that we have, to take more informed action. So, for example, generally, this is a generalization, women may be more motivated to follow a career that helps people. And this is the kind of information we should be using when we're teaching young people about STEM careers. So traditionally, the stereotypical STEM careers that we teach young people about, they will focus on what the job is specifically and not the impact in the bigger picture. So that's one of the areas. So kind of feeding in what we know about gender and teaching STEM careers in that way to young people. And the second part of it really is more to do with in the workplace. So I think workplace employers can improve and cater to the needs of a more diverse workforce, making it more inclusive. And this includes not just attracting women to work for them, but then retaining them. So for example, schemes for parents or mothers returning to work, having job sharing for part-time workers. And there's so many other creative ways that employers can be inclusive. And then on top of that, I think job descriptions can be much more inclusive and take into consideration the data and some of the information we know about how men and women pick jobs and how they apply for them. Women would wait to meet 99% of a job spec before they apply, and men generally would go for it even if they didn't meet 70% of the criteria. So I think there's some training that needs to be done for hiring managers, raising awareness of things like unconscious bias, and teaching people how to write job descriptions. So there's a lot that can be done, and I think it's about using the data and the information we know to make actions that we can then measure and see that performance. That's my very engineering answer on that.
Do you know what? Some of the data is a bit scary, and I'm glad you touched on diverse workforce, because that's a big part of it. We did our marketing team did a research program on this a few months ago, and it's crazy. It's like 57% of current employees this is just across STEM, not just space, wish they had a more diverse workforce. And it shows actually people that are broaching this subject and actually taking it on board and hiring more diverse workforce, they're all seeing an increase in productivity by over sort of 35-36%. and then the companies actually have a diverse and inclusive culture, experience a 30% increase in revenue and profit margin. So the stats are there, and I know it's not all about revenue generation and money, but it proves that it does work. So yeah, everything you said is completely nail on the head, and something that I think across the industry it's definitely getting better, but I think we've still got a long way to go at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and on the other side, that I wanted to touch on. Thanks for going through all that, by the way. The next bit I just wanted to touch on failures and achievements. I think, especially again, I don't want to sort of pick on the younger generation, but I think with various social media platforms now and Twitter, Instagram, and everything, everyone just kind of sees the highlight reels of success and the achievements and the sort of the byproduct, but they don't tend to see the hard work and the grind, all the sacrifice that leads up to that point. So throughout your career, life, or however you want to say it, what would you consider to be so far your biggest failure, and what did you learn from that failure? And on the other side of that coin, what would you consider your biggest achievement career to date?
I think I'm going to give maybe hopefully not too much of a cliche answer, but I've thought about this, and yeah, I think failure is a very strong word, and I think it's sometimes the mistakes and the detours that you take in life where you learn the most and become a better person. So I like to think there are there's one thing I think I would have done differently, and that would probably be choosing a different degree, because maybe that would have made it easier for me to kind of get into the space industry. Had I known what career paths there were and what options there were, then that would have probably made that choice easier. But in a roundabout way, I've still got to where I wanted to be. But yeah, I guess this is where I go into my roundabout way, because I'm kind of going into talk about an achievement that I'm really proud of, but then I'm going to come back to maybe a bit more of a struggle that I faced. So when I first got my job at Teledyne, it wasn't the dream job I thought it would be. And as I mentioned to you, I didn't really know much about the company. I knew that they made image sensors for space. And at the time I didn't appreciate it, but looking back, it was probably the best thing that I have done in my career so far. The engineering graduate scheme I did, it rounded me as an employee. I got to experience everything from process development engineering to bid management, quality assurance. And then once I graduated, I was lucky that a job had opened in Teledyne's research and development team as a systems engineer. And I have to say that, this was a job that suited my skills, and I really enjoy it, systems engineering. And at the time, the people interviewing me for the job, they gave me a shot and they saw my potential, even though I didn't have experience in systems engineering or quantum or whatever I was going to be working on. So that really set me up in my career. And that experience I had of doing that systems engineering in that couple of years at Teledyne, it's given me so much hands-on experience. And I'm quite proud of that achievement. But I guess on the other hand, that one of the sad things is that generally unconscious bias means that, when we're hiring, men will be hired for their potential to fulfill a role and women will be hired for their experience. And this isn't the way it should be. And I think this needs to be changed. It's something that I've faced and struggled with, which is trying to prove that I'm ready for a more senior position and not being given the chance. So I think it's saying when you say to someone, I'm ready for this role, and they've either not told you directly, or they've come back and said that you need to go away and prove yourself first, and then we'll see whether we'll give you the position. So and I think in that position, my advice would be to, go somewhere where you are valued and your employer sees your value and your worth. And if you try to vocalize it, then you have to look out for yourself and find an employer that does, because it's really difficult to believe in yourself and put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And the least that someone should do is give you feedback on how you can get there. So that's my roundabout answer.
No, I think, do you know what, there is definitely a lack of, and it will come on to us in a second, but I think there is a general lack of guidance and mentors at the moment. And this is kind of why we started this show again, is to kind of act as, like, each episode, if it can act as some type of mentorship of people actually listening to it and understanding where they can improve, or things they can learn, or resources they can use to kind of better themselves, then all the better. So no, thanks for going through that. And then the next bit, if it's okay, just kind of get to sort of current date. Could you please tell our listeners a bit about where you are at the moment? So what QCTRL do, how they fit into the space sector, and also be interesting to see as well, just where do you see, because I'm seeing more and more of quantum technology now coming into the space sector. How do you see quantum technology developing its sort of space applications over the next sort of 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So Q Control, they're a growing startup. They're both based in Australia and the US. They specialize in two main areas. One of them is quantum computing, which probably a lot more people know about, and then quantum sensing, which is the area that I work in. And tell me if this is too technical, but I thought I'd just kind of give a little bit of an insight into what quantum sensing means and break that down a bit. So quantum utilizes the fundamental nature of particles to get useful information. So just to give you an example, at room temperature, your atoms have kinetic energy, and when you slow them down using lasers until they're very still, you can use them as sensitive test masses and then observe forces that they feel. So that is called cold atom or laser cooling technology, and quantum sensors use cold atom technology. And one of the applications is gravity sensing from space. And this can tell us really useful information about the Earth and allow us to observe the climate and monitor the sea levels rising in it. So yeah, that was my in a nutshell on that. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, quantum sensors could be used commercially in space to tell us a lot more about the Earth. So we already have gravity sensors in space, but this would be the next generation of them, providing improvement in sensitivity, so getting more information, better information, and more continuous data gathering. There are already some quantum systems in space. So, for example, there's the Cold Atom Lab on the International Space Station, but this is more of a science experiment, if you like, and it's human operated. So I think the next challenge is to demonstrate autonomy, improve the use of these systems in the space environment.
Perfect. Thanks for going through that. And I think, thanks for giving a breakdown on because I personally, I know I've ran sort of the engineering and the technology side of the space, but quantum technology, sometimes it's advanced. It goes over my head a lot of this. So thanks for breaking that down for me as well. Excellent. And I guess the next thing I want to talk about is the advising. And this does kind of tie in with what we've been talking about the last couple of minutes around the guidance and the mentorship and sort of just understanding things and general advice throughout the years. But whether it be in your personal life or throughout your career, what would you say so far, sort of career today, is the best and the worst advice that you've been given?
That's a really good question. I think the best advice is something I heard recently, and it was, it is advice, but it's that even if you're in a difficult situation or an experience or a job, that there's always something amazing or better that will come from that experience. So there's always a silver lining. So for example, if you're on a job that you don't quite enjoy, you might end up learning or being introduced to another company that you didn't know of. So it's about looking for the opportunities and realizing that you don't have to settle. And I guess the worst advice is, it's related to this, but it's when you're in a situation or a job that you are not you're not enjoying or doesn't feel quite right. And some people might say to you to persevere and just stick with it blindly. And I think I've always lived by the attitude that you have control of your career and you don't have to, tolerate or put up with anything that you don't feel is benefiting you. So yeah, I guess I don't agree with just staying in a job because you've only been there for 2 months, or staying in a job because you need to keep your CV looking flawless without any gaps. And yeah, you should always strengthen all your options. So continue to put your all into that job as much as you can. And at the same time, look for opportunities that meet your aspirations, where you will feel valued, and generally go with your gut instinct.
Perfect. No, I couldn't agree more. And the next thing is around the resources piece. And I think this is tricky. And again, this comes back to, I think people kind of look into the space sector for, a brief second. And again, it's that kind of perception of it's too much for me. It's too advanced. It's rockets. It's scientists and astronauts and all the rest of it. So in terms of, I guess, resources that you've identified over the years and you've been able to utilize yourself. And again, that could be anything. It could be courses or programs or mentors that have kind of helped you over the years kind of develop that knowledge and help you sort of segue and transition into the space sector. What have they been from a resources perspective?
So yeah, I mean, with this one, there's quite a few, but I'll highlight just a few that I found really beneficial. And yeah, something I've really valued and benefited from is mentors. And I'd say always look for people around you that you can learn from. And I'll give an example that when I was working at Teledyne E2V, I asked one of the fellow systems engineers on my team to mentor me. And it was because of him that I heard about the International Space University. So that's another one to check out. And I wouldn't have heard about that if I didn't ask him to mentor me. And then whilst I was at the International Space University last summer, I learned about the Space Generation Advisory Council. And they are an organization for students and young professionals up to the age of 35. They've got lots of volunteering opportunities to give you experience, and also events and workshops related to space. So I'd say check them out, sign up for free, and see how you can get involved. And yeah, I mean, another platform which has supported me to raise my profile, which is not specifically space related, is We Are the City. And they support women across many professions, not just women, men also. And it's also a great place to find out more about different professions across other industries, and maybe to even find a mentor. And I know you mentioned, people who generally you might want to be involved in the space industry, but you might not want a technical role. And there's a great site called weworkinspace.com. And it's one of my friends from the International Space University. He started it to put together a list of non-technical space jobs. So that's also out there. There's lots out there, but I'll stop at that.
WeWorkInSpace.com. Not come across that. That sounds amazing, because that is this again, and again, this does kind of come. I know I sound like a bit of a broken record, but this is like these questions towards the sort of the end of the episodes that we do. We hope that these kind of little golden nuggets that our guests kindly give, which you've just been giving about the last 15, 20 minutes, is that it's all these areas and these companies, websites, information that they can access to actually make it more accessible. That's the whole purpose of this, is to bring people inside the sector from outside the sector that think that before they've kind of hopefully listened to one of these podcast episodes, that the space sector is just beyond their reach. And that sounds really cool. So I know the first thing when I speak to any of my friends or family, the first thing they say is, oh, it's just all rocket scientists and astronauts, isn't it? And it's actually understanding and educating people that there is a job literally for anybody in space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that sounds amazing. Thank you. Well, look, thanks ever so much for going through that. I guess the final question we've got to close out the show with. First of all, I just want to again thank you for taking the time to come onto our show today. It's been amazing speaking with you. Again, is what advice, I think the last few questions have been really good around advice, but for those people that we've literally just been talking about that are outside of the space sector looking in, what advice would you give to those people looking to enter into the space industry in 2022 and beyond?
I would say that, look out for opportunities and, sign up to them. So go and join the Space Generation Advisory Council, or if you're under 35, look for opportunities to volunteer and events that you can attend. There's the International Astronautical Congress in September in Paris, so that would be great for networking, knowledge sharing. Say, reach out to someone for a mentor, ask around, because that's a huge benefit. Reach for the stars. Don't let anyone tell you can't do it, because you can, and you'll get where you want to be. Challenge the status quo and ask for opportunities. You'll be surprised what people will agree to. Like when our CTO at Teledyne agreed to let me present at the UK Space Conference and represent a company. So, ask and you'll be surprised what you'll be able to do.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Thanks ever so much. Excellent. Well, that concludes the end of our show. That's our last question from us. It's been brilliant. Thank you ever so much for taking the time and coming on the show today.
It's my pleasure, Richard. Yeah, thank you. That was really good.
Excellent. No worries. Well, have a great rest of your week. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.